must have an appropriate uniform." She looked at her watch. "Now, if you will be so good, I would like you to wait here. I have a meeting with the other members of the council." Clary, with his broad pink face sweating under his peaked cap, ambled up to Fergus's cottage. He knew Fergus had 4 children because Hamish had told him, and because it was the school holidays he expected to see them playing around. There was a baby in a battered pram outside the door. He waggled his fingers at the baby, who stared solemnly back. Clary knocked at the door. Martha answered it and stepped back with a little cry of alarm when she saw his uniform. "Just a friendly call," said Clary. "Mind if I come in?" "I'm just getting the children their lunch." The children, Johnny, 10 years old, Callum, 8, and Sean, 4, were sitting round a table. They looked at him as solemnly as the baby had done. "What are they having for lunch?" asked Clary, his mind always on food. "Baked beans on toast." Martha looked so tired and white, and the children so unnaturally quiet, that Clary's heart was touched. "You all need feeding up," he said. "You just wait here. I'll do the lunch for you." "But that's not necessary," began Martha, but with a cheery wave, Clary was moving off with the lightness and speed which makes some fat men good dancers. He returned after half an hour, carrying 2 heavy shopping bags. "Now, if you'll just show me the kitchen." Martha led him into a small, narrow kitchen. "Off you go and watch telly," said Clary. "Food on the table in a minute." Martha switched on the television, and the children joined her on the sofa. Clary beat sirloin steaks pepper-thin and tossed them in oil and garlic. He heated garlic bread in the oven. He tossed salad in a bowl. He chopped potatoes and fried a mountain of chips. Soon they were all gathered around the table. "There's Coca-Cola for you lot," said Clary, beaming at the children, "and Mum and I will have a glass of wine." The children gazed at this large, expansive, friendly man. Johnny thought he looked like Santa Claus. They ate busily. "I'm afraid we're costing you a lot of money," said Martha. "I put it on my boss's account," said Clary. Under the influence of the wine and good food, Martha showed ghost-like signs of her earlier prettiness. But all the time she was dreading her husband's return. Clary talked about his days of policing in Strathbane, while the children listened and Martha began to relax. Her husband could hardly make a scene with a policeman in the house. After lunch, the children settled down in front of the television set again. No, that won't be doing at all on such a fine day," said Clary. "Mum and I'll do the dishes, and then it's outside with the lot of you." "Why did you come?" asked Martha, as Clary washed and she dried. "Just to say that if your man is beating you, you should report it," said Clary. "He's not beating me," said Martha. "Besides, say he was, I couldn't support the children. They'd be taken away from me." Clary looked down at her fragile figure. "That would not happen, for I would not let it happen, lassie. That's the lot. Now let's see if we can give those kids of yours some exercise." Clary improvised a game of rounders with a broom handle and an old tennis ball. The children ran about, screaming with laughter. Martha felt tears welling up in her eyes. When had she last heard her children laugh? "So, that's settled then," said Mrs. Fleming triumphantly, as the members of the council looked back at her, feeling as if they had all been beaten and mugged. In vain had they protested at the cost of the proposed scheme. Mrs. Fleming had bulldozed her way through all their objections. She returned to her office, where Fergus was waiting patiently. She took a tape measure out of her drawer. "Now, I'll just measure you for that uniform." Fergus felt bewildered. He had double the salary, and not only that, he had a chance to bully the villagers. Not one can or bottle or newspaper should make their appearance in the general rubbish. He began to feel elated. The good times were coming. The thought of a drink to celebrate flickered through his brain, but he dismissed it. As Mrs. Fleming measured and made notes, he felt increasingly buoyed up by his new status. He, Fergus MacLeod, was now an environment officer. Martha, from the position of her cottage, could see part of the winding road that led into Loch Dhu. She also knew the sound of the garbage truck's engine. "Dad's coming!" she shouted. Clary thought that it was as if the game of rounders had turned into a game of statues. The children froze in mid-action. The sound of the truck roared nearer. Then they crept into the house. "You'd better go," said Martha to Clary. "Remember, lassie," said Clary, "I'm just down the road. You don't need to put up with it." She nodded, her eyes wide and frightened, willing him to go. Clary ambled off and turned the corner to the waterfront, just as Fergus's truck roared past. Fergus parked the truck. Martha went out to meet him. Her husband's first words made her heart sink. "We're going to celebrate tonight." Celebration usually only meant one thing. But Fergus was more eager for his new job than for any drink. He carried a box of groceries into the kitchen. There was Coke and crisps and chocolates for the children. There was an odd assortment of groceries, venison pâté, various exotic cheeses, Parma ham, bottled cherries, and cans of fruit. Martha thought wistfully of Clary's offering of steak. "What are we celebrating?" she asked timidly. "I am Loch Dubh's new environment officer," said Fergus. He proudly told her of his increased salary, of the new truck, of the greening of Loch Dubh. For the MacLeod family, it was a strangely relaxed evening. Martha prayed that the children would not mention Clary's visit, and, to her relief, they did not. They had become so wary of their father's rages that they had learned to keep quiet on all subjects at all times. For the next few weeks it seemed as if success was a balm to Fergus's normally angry soul. He even chatted to people in the village. Clary felt obscurely disappointed. He had been nourishing private dreams of being a sort of knight-errant who would rescue Martha from a disastrous marriage. Martha had never known Fergus to go so long without a drink before. She was still frightened of him, like someone living perpetually in the shadow of an active volcano, but was grateful for the respite. Then one morning, flyers were delivered to each household in Loch Dubh, announcing a meeting to be held in the church hall to discuss improvements to Loch Dubh. Hamish, along with nearly everyone else, went along. Mrs. Fleming was on the platform. She was wearing a black evening jacket, glittering with black sequins over a white silk blouse. Her long black skirt was slit up one side to reveal one stocky, muscular leg in a support stocking. She announced the great greening of Loch Dubh. Villagers listened, bewildered as they learned that they would need to start separating the garbage into various containers. New bottle banks and paper banks would be placed on the waterfront on the following day. "What's a bottle bank?" whispered Archie McLean, a fisherman. "It's one of the big bell-shaped metal bins like they have outside some of the supermarkets in Strathbane. You put your bottles in there." "Oh, is that what they're for?" said Archie. "Oh, michty me, would you look at that?" Mrs. Fleming had brought Fergus onto the platform. The other members of the council had suggested that a uniform of green overalls would be enough, but Mrs. Fleming had given the job of designing the uniform to her nephew Peter, a willowy young man with ambitions to be a dress designer. The audience stared in amazement as Fergus walked proudly onto the platform. His uniform was pseudo-military, bright green, and with epaulets and brass buttons. On his head he wore a peaked cap, so high on the crown and so shiny on the peak that a Russian officer would kill for it. He looked for all the world like the wizened dictator of some totalitarian regime. Someone giggled, then someone laughed out loud, and then the whole hall was in an uproar. Fergus stood there, his long arms hanging at his sides, his face red as the gales of laughter beat upon his ears. He hated them. He hated them all. He would get even. The following day, Hamish strolled down to the harbour to watch the work on the new hotel. Jobs were scarce in the Highlands, and he was pleased to see so many of the locals at work. "Hamish?" He swung round. Priscilla Halberton-Smythe stood there. He felt for a moment that old tug at his heart as he watched the clear oval of her face and the shining bell of her hair. But then he said mildly, "Come to watch the rivals at work, Priscilla?" "Something like that." "It worries me, Hamish. We've been doing so well. They're going to take custom away from us." "They haven't any fishing rights," said Hamish easily. "That's what most of your guests come for, the fishing. And you don't take coach parties." "Not yet. We may have to change our ways to compete." "I haven't seen a sign of the new owner yet," remarked Hamish. "I believe he's got hotels all over Europe." "Any of your staff showing signs of deserting?" "Not yet. But, oh, Hamish, what if he offers much higher wages? We'll really be in trouble." "Let's see what happens," said Hamish lazily. "I find if you sit tight and don't do anything, things have a way of resolving themselves." "How's your new copper getting on?" Hamish sighed. "I thought the last one, Willie Lamont, was a pain with his constant cleaning and scrubbing and not paying any attention to his work. One new cleaner for sale and he was off and running. Now, I've got Clary. That's the trouble with living in Loch Dubh, Priscilla. At Strathbane they say to themselves, now which one can we really do without? And so I get Clary. Oh, he's good-natured enough, and he's a grand cook, but he smells a bit, and he is damn lazy. Hamish's accent always became more sibilant when he was upset. If he doesn't take a bath soon, I'm going to tip him into the loch. Priscilla laughed. That bad? That bad? And what's all this greening business? It's that bossy woman. You weren't at the church hall? No. She is from the council, and she wants us to put all our rubbish into separate containers. There come the big bins. Priscilla looked along the waterfront. A crane was lifting the first of the huge bell-shaped objects into place. We don't like change, she said. They'll rebel. They won't put a single bottle or newspaper in any of those bins. Ah, but you haven't seen the green dustman yet. There he is. Fergus, resplendent in his new uniform, had appeared. He was standing with his hands behind his back, rocking on his heels, his face shadowed by his huge peaked cap. Heavens, said Priscilla faintly. All he needs to complete that ensemble is a riding crop or a swagger stick. I think that uniform means trouble, said Hamish. Have you noticed that traffic wardens and people like that turn into fascist beasts the moment they get a uniform on? A dustman can't do much. He can do a lot in the way of petty bullying. The Curry sisters didn't give Fergus a Christmas box, and he didn't collect their rubbish until they complained to the council. Well, there you are. Any bullying, they'll all complain to the council, and then it'll stop. If that Fleming woman will listen to anyone. What's her game? Is she a dedicated environmentalist? It said on the flyer that she was in charge of the council's environment department. I think, talking of bullies, that she likes to find ways of spending the taxpayers' money to order people around. In fact, here she comes. Mrs. Fleming drove along the waterfront while they watched. She got out of the car. Fergus strutted up to her. Priscilla exploded into giggles. Would you believe it, Hamish? Fergus saluted her. Hamish laughed as well. The summer days and lack of crime on his beat were making him lazier than ever and dulling his usual intuition. He did not guess that Fergus's silly salute would make Mrs. Fleming not hear one word against him, and so set in train a chain of events which would lead to horror. Chapter 2. The wretch, consented all in self, living shall forfeit fair renown, and doubly dying shall go down to the vile dust from whence he sprung, unwept, unhonoured, and unsung. Sir Walter Scott. The next collection day passed without incident, and the following one. But then the boxes and wheelie bins were delivered, and Fergus began to take his revenge. The elderly Curry sisters, Nessie and Jessie, were the first victims. This was very unfair, for they were among the few residents who had actually separated their rubbish into boxes and had put the rest into the wheelie bin. They found the boxes had been emptied of cans, bottles, and papers, but the wheelie bin was still full, and on it was a note on green paper. It said, "Garden rubbish is to be burnt. F. MacLeod, Environment Officer." "What does he mean? Garden rubbish?" asked Nessie. "We haven't got any." "Haven't got any," echoed her sister, who had the irritating habit of repeating the last words anyone, including herself, said. "I'll get a chair, get a chair." For the bin was too large for the small sisters to look into easily. Jessie carried out a kitchen chair, and standing on it, lifted the plastic lid and peered down into the bin. "There's just those dead roses, the ones that were in the vase, that we threw out. "I'm going to write to the council," said Nessie. "He hasn't taken the garbage," complained Clary. "Where's the wee man's wretched wheelie bin?" asked Hamish. "You're supposed to use it, not leave it in bags." "Och, I thought that wheelie bin would be grand for the hen feed," said Clary. Hamish sighed. "Get it out and put the garbage into it, Clary. We're now living under a dictatorship." And so it happened, all round the village. After all, it was the villagers, some years ago, who had taken away the network-type metal baskets from the waterfront to use as lobster pots. Highland ingenuity had therefore found many uses for the wheelie bins other than the one for which they were intended. They were used to store all sorts of implements and cattle feed. Children played games at wheeling each other up and down the waterfront in them, and their parents duly received threatening green notes from the dustman. Letters of complaint poured into Strathbane Council. Mrs. Fleming hailed originally from Hamilton in Lanarkshire. She thought all Highlanders were lazy and difficult and just plain weird. and so she did not trouble to answer even one of the letters. She told her secretary to throw them all away. "I've got a wee job for you, Clary," said Hamish. "Our job is to protect everyone in this village, and that includes a pest like Fergus MacLeod. Get round there, and tell him to go easy. He's leaving garbage uncollected for this reason, and the atmosphere is getting ugly." Clary brightened at the thought of seeing Martha again. "Right, sir. And Clary, order yourself a new uniform from Strathbane." Clary looked down at his round figure. "Why?" "That one's all old and shiny. And when did you last have a bath?" Clary blushed and hung his head. "Aye, well, why don't you nip into the bathroom and have a bath, and I'll do what I can with your uniform." Clary meekly went off to the bathroom. Hamish opened up the ironing table in the kitchen and began to sponge and clean and press Clary's uniform. In the bathroom, Clary wallowed in the hot water like a whale. Then he towelled himself dry and opened the bathroom cupboard and peered at the contents. There was an unopened bottle of Brut on the top shelf. Clary lifted it down and opened it, and then splashed himself liberally with it. He put on clean underwear and shambled into the kitchen and collected his cleaned and pressed uniform from Hamish with a muttered, "Thanks." Hamish reeled back a bit before what smelled like a tidal wave of Brut, but charitably said nothing, hoping that the fresh air would mitigate the smell once Clary was on his way. Clary walked slowly along the waterfront. It was another beautiful day. Recipes ran through his mind. He stopped outside the Italian restaurant and studied the menu. "Anything you fancy, officer?" Clary turned round and found himself facing an elderly man. "I'm Ferrari, the owner," the man said. "I like Italian food," said Clary amiably, "but I hope you don't use too much basil. That's the trouble these days. People go mad with the herbs, and everything smells great and tastes like medicine. You like cooking?" "It's my hobby," said Clary proudly. Mr. Ferrari eyed him speculatively. Hamish's previous constable, the cleanliness freak Willie Lamont, had left the police force to marry Ferrari's pretty relative, Lucia. The restaurant chef was leaving at the end of the month. "You must come for a meal one evening," said Mr. Ferrari. "As my guest, of course." "That's very kind of you, sir," said Clary. He had a sudden dream of sitting in the restaurant in the evening, looking at Martha in the candlelight. Her husband couldn't stay sober that long. He might even drop dead, and then... He beamed at Mr. Ferrari. "I might take you up on that offer. Would it be all right if I brought a lady?" "My pleasure, officer. Now, you can do something for me. That dustman is picking through the restaurant garbage and leaving most of it. We have too many cans and bottles to put into those little boxes." "I'm on my way to have a word with him." "Good. Between ourselves, officer, it is time you did. The feeling against that man is running high, and if he is not stopped, something nasty might happen to him." "I wish it would," thought Clary, as he touched his cap and walked away. Clary had never married. He had entered the police force because his mother had thought it a good idea. He had lived with his mother until her death a year before his move to Lochdu. Lazy and unambitious, he had never risen up the ranks. His mother had seen off any woman who looked interested in him. The police women he had occasionally worked with terrified him. He privately thought the move to Lochdu was the best thing that had ever happened to him. He loved the village. He liked his kind, laid-back boss. He thought again of Martha. There was something about her faded prettiness, her crushed appearance, that touched his heart. He turned up the lane leading to Martha's cottage. In his heart he hoped against hope that the dustman would not be at home. The baby was in its pram outside. Clary made clucking noises at it and then rapped on the door. The eldest boy, Johnny, opened the door. "Father at home?" asked Clary. The boy looked nervously over his shoulder. Fergus appeared. He was wearing an old shirt and jeans. "What is it?" he snapped. "May I come in?" asked Clary. "No. We'll talk outside." Fergus walked out and shut the door behind him. Clary removed his peaked cap and tucked it under one arm. "It's like this, sir. You are causing a great deal of distress among the villagers. You are not collecting the rubbish, and you are leaving nasty wee notes." "And what's that to you?" "It's a council matter. Any complaints, and they can write to the council." "I'm here to warn you. You might be in danger." Fergus snickered. "From this bunch of wimps? Forget it." Over the dustman's shoulder, Clary could see Martha at the window. She gave him a wan smile. Normally amiable, Clary could feel rage burning up inside him as he looked down into the sneering face on the dustman. "You are a nasty wee man," said Clary. "I've given you a warning, but it would be a grand day for the village if you were killed." He turned and walked away, and then turned back at the garden gate. "By God, man, I could kill you myself!" And, followed by the sound of Fergus's jeering laughter, he walked away. Clary walked only as far as the waterfront. He leaned on the wall and stared down into the summer blue waters of the sea loch. A yacht sailed past, heading for the open sea. He could hear people laughing and chattering on board, see the white sails billowing out before a stiff breeze. He suddenly wanted to see Martha. He turned his back to the wall, feeling the warmth of the stone through his uniform. While Hamish Macbeth watered his sheep and then returned to the police station to do some paperwork and wondered what was keeping Clary, Clary stayed where he was. Perhaps Martha might appear. Perhaps she might go to the general store for something. With monumental patience, Clary stayed where he was until the sun began to sink down behind the mountains. She might come down to the village to buy something. Patel, who ran the general store, like all good Asian shopkeepers, stayed open late. Suddenly he saw her, hurrying down the lane that led to the waterfront, carrying a shopping basket. He went to meet her. "Oh, Mr. Graham," exclaimed Martha, her hand fluttered up to one cheek to cover a bruise. "He's been hitting you," said Clary. "Oh, no," said Martha. "Silly of me. I walked into a door." "You walked into a fist," said Clary. "You've got to turn him in." "I can't," said Martha, tears starting to her eyes. "Now then, I didn't mean to upset you, lassie," said Clary. "Let me help you with the shopping." "I can manage. Fergus wants a bottle of whiskey." "Drinking again? That's bad." "At least he'll wander off somewhere, and I'll get a bit of peace," said Martha. They walked into the store together. "Buy him the cheap stuff," said Clary. "No, he wants grouse." "Let me pay for it." "No, that would not be fitting." "I came up to your place to warn him. Steady now." Clary grasped at the bottle of whiskey which Martha had nearly dropped. "What about?" she asked. "He's creating bad feeling in the village. He could be in danger. God, I could kill him myself." Jessie Curry, at the shelves on the other side from where they were talking and screened from their view, listened avidly. "I'd better hurry," said Martha. "He'll start wondering what's keeping me." "I'll walk you back a bit of the way," said Clary. Curious village eyes watched them as Martha paid for the whiskey, and then they walked out of the shop together. Later that evening, Hamish was barely soothed by the plate of beef Wellington that Clary slid under his nose. He had been called out to a burglary in the nearby town of Brakey, and he wondered, after he had completed his investigations, what the point was of having a constable who was so supremely uninterested in police matters. But he noticed a change had come over Clary. His face seemed harder. "So what happened with Fergus?" asked Hamish. Clary told him, ending up with bursting out. "He's been beating his wife again. I tell you, sir, I've a damn good mind to resign from the force and give that bastard the beating he deserves." Hamish stared in wonder at the nearly untouched food on Clary's plate, and then at the angry gleam in the normally placid constable's eyes. He leaned back in his chair. "Of all the things to happen," said Hamish, "you have gone and fallen in love with the dustman's wife." Clary stared at him. Then his eyes lit up, and his round face glowed. "Is this love, sir?" "Yes, but she's married, and this is the small village. Eat your food, man, and forget her. I'll deal with Fergus myself tomorrow." "How?" "We have our methods, Watson." But Hamish Macbeth was getting seriously worried. The transformation of the constable had sharpened his wits. Fergus must be made to see sense, even if it meant giving him a taste of what he had been giving his wife. The following day was collection day, and Loch Dhu rose to find the rubbish uncollected. It was a warm, close day, and the midges, those Highland mosquitoes, were out in force. Fergus had disappeared before, but never on collection days. But he had become so hated in the village that nobody cared much, with the exception of Hamish Macbeth. Still, even Hamish thought, like everyone else, that surely Fergus was lying drunk somewhere up on the moors. But after a day went by without any sight of him, Hamish's uneasiness deepened into dread. "If something's happened to him, we'd better find out soon," said Hamish to Clary. "We'll split up. You search around the village, and I'll take the Land Rover and go up on the moors." Clary set off. As he questioned villager after villager, he began to share some of Hamish's trepidation. "I hope he's dead," said Archie McLean, pausing in the repair of a fishing net. And if the wee bastard isn't he, I'll help him on his way." Everyone else seemed to share Archie's sentiments. Clary walked along the harbour to where the workmen were busy renovating the hotel. None of them had seen Fergus, but one volunteered the information that the boss had arrived. Curious to see this hotel owner, Clary made his way into the foyer of the hotel, where two men were unwrapping a massive crystal chandelier. "Boss around?" he asked. "In the office, over there," said one, jerking his thumb in the direction of a frosted glass door. Clary ambled across the foyer and opened the door. A slim, red-headed woman was sitting behind a computer. "Yes, officer." "Is the boss in?" asked Clary. "May I ask what the nature of your inquiry is?" "The village dustman has gone missing." A faint look of amusement crossed her beautiful face. "I'm sure Mr. Ionides, who has just arrived here, cannot know anything about a dustman." The door to the inner office opened, and a small, neat, well-barbered man appeared. He had thick, dark brown hair and liquid brown eyes. He was in his shirt sleeves and carried a sheaf of papers. He radiated energy. His eyes fell on the large, uniformed figure of Clary. "What is a policeman doing here?" he asked. His voice was only faintly accented. "I've come about our dustman. He's missing." "And what has that got to do with me?" Clary shifted awkwardly from foot to foot. "I thought you might have heard something, sir." "No." Ionides and his secretary calmly surveyed Clary, who began to shuffle backwards towards the door. "Just thought I would ask," said Clary. They continued to watch him in silence as he turned and opened the door and went out. "Phew," he thought, mopping his brow outside the door. "What an odd pair." He realized, once he was outside the hotel, that he had been delaying going to see Martha. He somehow didn't want to go to that cottage and find Fergus at home. The villagers were right. The man didn't deserve to live. It did not strike Clary as odd that so many people would wish the death of a mere dustman. Dustmen who fail to collect garbage can arouse deep passions, and dustmen who leave nasty green notes to explain why the rubbish is not being collected can drive the meekest to open hatred. High council taxes had made everyone aware that they were paying for a service they just weren't getting. Clary walked more quickly now as he neared Fergus's cottage. As he approached, his eyes took in the broken guttering and the blistered paint on the windows, and he mentally repaired all the damage. He knocked on the door and waited. Johnny answered, his little face lighting up when he saw Clary. "Mum's out in the back garden," he said. Clary removed his peaked cap and tucked it under his arm. He followed the boy through the dark little living room where the children were watching television. Probably too frightened to play outside in case Dad comes home, he thought. Martha was hanging sheets out to dry in the back garden. A breeze blew strands of hair across her face. "Let me do that," said Clary, taking a sheet from her. "Heard from that man of yours?" "Not a word," said Martha. "He's never missed a collection day before." "Is he in his uniform? That green would make him easy to spot." "No, he was in a white shirt, tie and jacket. He took that bottle of whiskey from me and walked off out of the house." Together they lifted up sheets and pinned them along the line. Martha paused to pass a weary hand over her brow. "Goodness, it's hot." "You and the children should be out on a day like this," said Clary. "Fergus might be back any moment," said Martha. "I must say, I sometimes look down at the loch on a day like this and think it would be nice to go out on a boat and get a bit of cool air." "That's the last sheet," said Clary. "Well, why not?" "We couldn't. What if Fergus comes home?" "Then you can say you were out with me looking for him. Come on, get the kids." Curious village eyes watched the procession made up of Clary and Martha, the children and the baby in the pram as they walked down to the waterfront. "What's going on?" asked Jessie Curry, standing outside Patel's door. "Have they found him? "Shouldn't think so," said Nessie. "Martha's laughing. Never heard her laugh before." Both sisters, the sun glinting on their thick spectacles, watched as Clary stopped to speak to Archie McLean. "He's giving him money," said Nessie. "Now they're getting into that rowboat. Michty me! Doesn't that policeman have any work to do?" "It's Hamish Macbeth, that's who it is, said Jessie. "Corrupted him in no time at all." They watched while Clary pushed off and then jumped in, the boat swaying dangerously under his weight. Then he picked up the oars and began to row off towards the centre of the loch. The children began to laugh at something. Martha sat in the bow, the baby on her lap, smiling at Clary. "Trouble's coming out of that," said Nessie. "Mark my words." Hamish Macbeth was tired and hot and thirsty. He had searched across the moors all day without finding Fergus or coming across anyone who had seen him. At last he drove slowly back towards Loch Dhu, and then, on impulse, turned and drove up towards the Tommel Castle Hotel. The castle had been built in the last century by a beer baron with a taste for Gothic architecture. He parked and walked into the hotel. Priscilla came out of the hotel office and came forward to meet him. "You look exhausted," she said. "Like a drink?" "A long cold drink of iced fizzy water would be grand." "Come into the bar and I'll get it for you." Hamish followed her into the bar. She was wearing a lime green cotton shirt worn loose over a pair of cream shorts. Her long tanned legs ended in low-heeled strapped sandals. A shaft of late sunlight striking through the mullioned windows of the bar turned her golden hair into an aureole. Priscilla asked the barman for an orange juice for herself and a fizzy water for Hamish. They carried their drinks over to a table. "What have you been up to?" asked Priscilla. "Looking for our missing Dustman. I hope you find him. We had to pay a contractor to come over from Strathbane and pick up ours. Surely he's just drunk again." "Well, normally that would be the case. But the wee man has caused such hatred in the village with his bullying and his silly green uniform. I'm frightened someone lost their temper and hit him too hard." "You're getting carried away, Hamish. Just think of everyone in Loch Dhu. They always curse Fergus. Some of the crofters might rough him up, but no one is going to kill him." Hamish took a gulp of water and stretched out his long legs. "That's better. To tell the truth, Priscilla, I still fear someone may have gone too far. He's a wife-beater, and if I'd got him on his own, I might have been tempted to give him a bit of his own medicine. That's not your style, Hamish. Look, we're a laid-back, easy-going lot, and we don't like this wee monster disrupting our lives." "Someone said he used to be an accountant. Is that true?" "I believe so, before the drink got him. I'll put in a report tonight to Strathbane headquarters, and then one to the council. We'll need a replacement." "That'll be hard to find." "Not in the least. The crofters all have some sort of part-time job, especially since the price they've been getting for sheep has slumped. Callum McSween up on the Breaky Road is a nice man and could do with a bit of extra money." "Never mind, Hamish. It's the bad atmosphere Fergus has created in the village that's getting to you. Then this warm weather makes all the uncollected garbage smell so high that it gets on people's nerves as well." Hamish finished his glass of water. "I'd best be getting back. Maybe Clary's found something out." "How's he getting on?" "Oh, he's a nice chap and a grand cook. I don't mind so much just now. Things are pretty quiet apart from a burglary over at Breaky and this Fergus business." He stood up. "You going back to London soon?" "I'll be staying on for a bit. Father's worried sick about this new hotel taking our custom away." "Aye. Well, maybe we'll have a meal some night." Priscilla looked down at her glass. "I'll let you know. I've got a friend coming up from London tomorrow." A man friend, thought Hamish, looking at her bent head. "Yes, let me know," he said, and walked off, feeling depressed. He drove down to the police station and swung the Land Rover into the short drive beside the building. It was only when he cut the engine that he heard the noise. Music was belting out from the police station, disco music, loud and throbbing. So loud, the police station seemed to be vibrating. Instead of walking in the kitchen door as usual, he went quietly round to the front and looked in the living-room window. Clary was dancing, surrounded by laughing children. He was bopping about and waving his arms. Martha was watching them, her face lit up with amusement. Hamish retreated quietly. He knew Clary had no right to invite guests to the police station without permission, and no right to throw a party. He should march in there like a good police officer and break up the party. But instead he walked back along the waterfront to the Italian restaurant. He felt in his bones that something bad had happened. Let Martha enjoy herself while she could. Nessie Curry carried a kitchen chair out to the wheelie bin beside the cottage she shared with her twin sister Jessie. She placed the chair beside the bin and climbed up on it, holding a bag of rubbish. Fergus would just need to put up with the bottles and cans, for all the little plastic boxes were full. She raised the lid of the bin and then gagged at the smell and clung to the bin for support as she hurriedly dropped the lid. She retreated back into the kitchen. "Oh, Jessie," she said, "there's the most terrible smell coming from our wheelie bin. What did you put in it?" "All the papers and bottles and stuff I couldn't get into the wee boxes, said Jessie. "I haven't put anything in there for a couple of days. "What about food scraps?" "They went to the compost heap and the rest to Mrs. Docherty's hens next door. "Then someone's put something nasty in ours." "Call Hamish Macbeth. I saw him pass the window an hour ago. He's probably gone to the Italians. I'll just go along and get him. It's his job to look for nasty things." Hamish was just finishing his meal when Nessie arrived. He listened to her tale of the smelly bin and said, "I'll be along in a minute. Have a torch ready. It'll save going back to the station." Hamish paid for his meal and then walked out. It was a warm, balmy evening. The reflections of stars shimmered on the black waters of the loch. He walked round to the side door of the Curry sisters' cottage. Nessie was waiting for him with a large electric torch. "Let's see what you've got," said Hamish, taking the torch from her. The minute he opened the lid of the bin and the horrible smell engulfed him, he felt a lump of ice settling in his stomach. He knew that smell. Tall as he was, he nonetheless climbed upon the chair and shone the strong beam down into the bin. The dead face of Fergus MacLeod stared up at him. Hamish took out a handkerchief and put it over his hand and turned the head slightly. There was a large, gaping wound in the back of it. There was a sudden, sickening sound of buzzing. The light from the torch was awakening the flies, fat bluebottles. He slammed down the lid and climbed down from the chair. Nessie and Jessie were both standing together now, staring at him in the starlight. "What is it?" asked Nessie. "Fergus. It's Fergus. Don't touch anything, ladies. It's murder." Chapter 3. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Book of Common Prayer. The next day dawned still and pale and milky, all colour bleached out of the landscape. The striped police tape hung outside the Curry sisters' cottage. Little groups of villagers stood outside, as motionless as the heavy air. Clary stood on duty, his usually cherubic face heavy and sad. The party of last night seemed light years away. Hamish had sent him to break the news to Martha. She had shrunk from him, her eyes dilated with shock. Mrs. Wellington, the minister's wife, alerted by the news which had spread like wildfire through Loch Dhu, had arrived to sit with Martha. Clary would have liked to talk, to banish the fright he saw in Martha's eyes, which seemed to stem from something other than the horror at learning of her husband's death. He had an uneasy feeling that Martha, upset by the news, might think that he, Clary, had bumped off her husband. Or was it something else? Could she have done it? He shook his head like a bull plagued by flies. That was ridiculous. He wondered how Hamish was getting on along at the police station. Detective Chief Inspector Blair had arrived. Blair was the bane of Hamish's life. He was a thick, vulgar, heavy-set Glaswegian who loathed Hamish and did not bother to hide his loathing. He was sitting behind the desk in the police station office, flanked by his usual sidekicks, Detectives Anderson and McNabb. "Now, from a preliminary questioning of the folks around here," began Blair, "there was one hell of a party going on in this station last night." "This is also my home, as well as a police station. I'm allowed to throw a party," said Hamish defensively. "But it wasn't your party, was it?" demanded Blair with a triumphant leer. "It was that fat, useless copper of yours. And who is he boogieing with? None other than Martha MacLeod. Furthermore, Mrs. MacLeod's neighbours heard Clary Graham shouting at Fergus that he would kill him." "A lot of people in the village have been overheard saying they would kill Fergus. It means nothing," said Hamish. "We'll see about that. As far as I am concerned, Graham is a suspect, so you get along there and send him along here." Hamish rose to his feet. "All right." "All right what?" "All right, sir," said Hamish wearily. He craved sleep. He had been up all night. He went out and walked along to the Curry's cottage. "Blair wants to see you," he said to Clary. "Why?" "At the moment, you're suspect number one." "That's daft." "Maybe, but run along and get it over with." Clary walked off just as the police pathologist, Mr. Sinclair, appeared round the side of the house. "What's the verdict?" asked Hamish. "The body's being moved to Strathbane for further examination," said Sinclair. "He was struck a smashing blow on the back of the head with something like a hammer and put in the bin." "When?" "Can't tell at the moment. I would hazard a guess that it was maybe a couple of days ago." "Could a woman have done it?" "Easily. But although the man was small and slight, it would take a powerful woman to get him into that bin without tipping it over." They stood aside as two men in white overalls carried out Fergus in a body bag laid on a stretcher. They looked impatiently up and down the waterfront, and then one put his fingers in his mouth and sent out a shrill whistle. An ambulance came cruising slowly up. "Sorry, we were just getting a cup of coffee," said the ambulance man. He jumped down with his partner and opened the back doors. Fergus's body was lifted inside. Hamish felt a pang of pity for Fergus. He had been an awful man, but the sheer indifference in the way his body was shovelled in and borne off went to his heart. In all his easy-going life, Clary had never before thought of leaving the police force, but he had never been one of Blair's targets before. As Blair hammered into him over a sheaf of reports about the party and the boat expedition, Clary could feel a rare rage mounting in him. When Blair paused for breath, Clary said, "Are you charging me with anything, sir?" "Not yet." "This is police harassment," said Clary. "What? You're a policeman yourself." "I want a lawyer." "Don't be daft." "It was my day off when I entertained Mrs. MacLeod and the children," said Clary, hoping Hamish would back him up on that one. "I can do what I like with my free time. It's a coincidence that the poor woman's man got murdered." "Oh, aye," sneered Blair. "And it's just a coincidence, is it, that you were heard saying you'd kill the man?" "More than me said that," said Clary, defiant. "Fergus had been beating that wife of his. It was enough to make the blood of any decent man boil." "Did she make an official complaint?" "No, sir." "Then it was none of your business. For all you know, she might have deserved a beating." "You Highlanders are all crazy," said Blair, who was a Glaswegian. "That remark is offensive," said Clary, suddenly calm. "I'm going to report that remark to the Race Relations Board. Discrimination against Highlanders. Racial slurs. And while I'm at it, sir, I'll tell them that you think a woman deserves a beating." "You do that, and I'll have you out of the force." "And by the time I've finished with you, I'll have you out of the force." Blair stared at Clary's now impassive face in baffled fury. He had no doubt the Race Relations Board would listen to this idiot's complaint. Recently, along with dealing with cases brought by Pakistanis, Indians, Africans, and Jamaicans, they had been handling well-publicized cases from English residents in Scotland complaining about racial discrimination. And if that remark of his about Martha MacLeod deserving a beating should come out... "Look, Clary, maybe I was a bit hasty. You go and question some of the folk and find out if anyone saw anything." Clary stalked off. Blair mopped his brow. He turned and caught the grin on Jimmy Anderson's face. "You!" he howled. "Get up to that Mrs. MacLeod and question her." Jimmy Anderson stopped on his way to talk to Hamish and gleefully told Hamish about Clary's confrontation with Blair. "Good for old Clary," said Hamish, amazed. "Where are you off to?" "To interview the widow." "Let me know what you get, Jimmy." "Aye. Well, get some whisky in. I don't think Blair will be hanging around much longer." "He hasn't met Mrs. Fleming yet, has he?" "Who's she?" "The environment woman from Strathbane who put Fergus in a stupid green uniform and put all these bins about the place. She'll be here any moment, if I'm not mistaken." "See you later." Jimmy walked off. Hamish took out his mobile phone and rang Callum McSween. "Listen, Callum," he said. "Have you heard? The Dustman's got himself murdered." "Aye. It was on the radio this morning." "Like the job?" "I could do with the money, Hamish, and that's a fact. I'll be sending a Mrs. Fleming from Strathbane Council along to see you. She's the one who'll be doing the hiring. I think the silly biddy wants to get herself in the newspapers by making Lochdu an environment-friendly place, so all you have to do is go along with it. Tell her what a great idea all those damn bins are. I won't have to wear that green uniform, will I? I can't see them running to the expense of another horror. I'll make sure Fergus is buried in it." "Grand, Hamish." "I can't promise. Oh, here she comes." Hamish rang off and tucked the phone in his pocket just as Mrs. Fleming drove up. "I heard the news," she said, lowering the car window. "This is dreadful." "That it is," said Hamish seriously. "And garbage all over the village. You'll need to get another man on it right away." "But who?" "There's a crofter about a mile along the Breaky Road. Callum McSween. Good worker, hot on the environment. He could start today." "I'll go directly." Hamish gave her directions. Then she asked, "Who is in charge of the case?" "Detective Chief Inspector Blair. You'll find him at the police station. But I'd get to Callum first." Callum McSween was dressed in a crisp white shirt and flannels with knife-edged creases when Mrs. Fleming's car drove up. His wife, Mary, had quickly cleaned the living room and was in the kitchen making a pot of fresh coffee. Callum answered the door to Mrs. Fleming. He was a very tall, well-built man with a craggy face, permanently tanned with working outdoors. "I am Mrs. Fleming, from Strathbane Council," she said. "Do you mind if I come in? I heard you might be prepared to take on the job of Environment Officer for Lochdu." Callum, affecting surprise, invited her in. His smiling wife came into the Croft House living room, bearing a tray with a pot of coffee, cups, and homemade shortbread. "I first must ask you if you understand what I have been trying to do in Lochdu," began Mrs. Fleming when she had been served with coffee. "I think you're out to make an example of Lochdu," said Callum. He leaned forward, his face serious. "If it works, you can get it into the newspapers and on television as an example to other villages. And I can tell you, I am all for that. There's a real pleasure in seeing a clean place." Mrs. Fleming smiled at him. She mentally judged that he would look well on television. "There would be the matter of a uniform, Mr. McSween." Callum repressed a shudder. "As to that, missus, I have been thinking that maybe white overalls would be fine. You must want to save a bit of money. I mean, poor Fergus's outfit must have cost a mint, but the white overalls would look just grand." "I'll see to it. Yes, I can see white overalls." In Mrs. Fleming's busy mind, the cameras rolled. She raised her hands and made a frame of them and studied Callum through it. "When would you be able to start?" "Right away." "Good. I will get that policeman in Lochdu to give you the keys to the truck. As to the salary—" She named a figure which made Callum's eyes blink rapidly. He would never have dreamed a dustman could earn that much. He had an appointment with the bank manager on the following morning. The bank was trying to call in his loan, and he had been terrified of losing his Croft House. They amicably discussed the details. Then Mrs. Fleming took her leave. Mary McSween, who had heard the size of the salary, just restrained herself from dropping a curtsy as Mrs. Fleming majestically swept out. Callum dialed 1471 and then dialed 3 and got connected to Hamish's mobile phone. "I've got the job, Hamish," he shouted. Hamish held the phone away from his ear. "You didn't need to phone, Callum, with a voice like that. You could have just stood outside your front door." "It's great, Hamish, I tell you, man. If there's anything I can ever do for you, let me know. Just keep your eyes and ears open and let me know if you hear anything interesting." "I'll do that. Oh, I need the keys to the truck." "I'll go get them. Come by the station this afternoon." Hamish decided there was not much point anyway standing outside the Curry's cottage any longer. The body had gone. The forensic team had finished their work and had left, taking the bin with them wrapped up in plastic. Hamish walked up towards Martha's cottage. He met Jimmy Anderson on the road. "How did you get on?" "Nothing much," said Jimmy. "Mrs. MacLeod began to cry, and that big tweedy woman, Mrs. Wellington, sent me off with a flea in my ear." "What sort of woman wears tweed in this weather?" "Mrs. Wellington." "So what are you up to? Going to collect the keys to the garbage truck? Forensic don't want it, do they?" "No. The neighbours say the truck was never moved from the outside of the house." "Fine. Call by later when you get rid of Blair." "He doesn't want this case, Hamish. He was working on some drugs bust, and he wants to get back to it." "Let's hope he does, before he starts arresting everyone in the village." Hamish walked on. He saw Mrs. Wellington walking towards him before she saw him. He leapt over a hedge and crouched behind it until he heard her go past. Then he leapt nimbly back over and walked to Martha's cottage. Martha was keeping to the old tradition. All the curtains in the cottage were closed tight. Hamish walked up the path and knocked on the door. There was a silence. He waited and knocked again. At last he tried the handle and opened the door and called, "Mrs. MacLeod." "Go away," shouted a boy's voice. "It's me, Hamish Macbeth." Johnny appeared. "Oh, it is yourself, Mr. Macbeth. The reporters have been around." "Is your mother in?" "Come, Ben." Hamish walked into the living room. Martha was sitting there, dull-eyed, the baby on her lap. Hamish removed his cap and sat down opposite her. Johnny joined the other children on the sofa. Their faces were white in the gloom. "I know you've got the curtains drawn as a mark of respect," said Hamish gently, "but it's not good for the children. Do you mind if I let some daylight in here?" "Do what you like," whispered Martha. Hamish jerked back the curtains. Then he took £5 out of his wallet and gave it to Johnny. "Take yourselves down to Patel's and get yourself some ice cream. Put the bairn in the pram and take it with you. It's no good to be locked up in here. Don't speak to any reporters." Johnny looked at his mother, who nodded. Johnny took the baby from her, and the children filed out of the room. Hamish studied Martha's white face and wide, frightened eyes. He said, "You must be feeling a great deal of guilt." "I didn't do it." "But you wanted him gone, but not in this way. You're relieved and ashamed of being relieved. You're frightened that whoever did this might come for you. That won't happen. It was Fergus who caused bad blood in this village, not you. You're worried about Clary. Clary, when he wasn't with me, was either with you or in full view of the village. Can you remember exactly what happened the evening Fergus disappeared?" "He got a phone call and became very excited," said Martha. "Good. That's a start. We'll check your phone records. What time would that be?" "About 6 o'clock. He asked me to go and get him some whiskey. I couldn't help it. I said, 'What about your job?' He told me to shut my mouth. He said there was more to life than being a dustman. I went down to Patel's. I met Clary and talked a bit and then went back with the whiskey. He had a couple of drams and then said he was going out. He put the whiskey bottle in his pocket. He must have been going somewhere in the village because he didn't take the truck." "Aye. But when your man had the drink taken, he'd often wander up on the moors. So why would you think it was somewhere in the village?" "I think he must have been going to meet someone." "Why?" "He put a clean white shirt on and a tie and his jacket. He liked his white shirts to be very white. That's why I thought someone might have seen him, even in the gloaming." "So when he didn't return, weren't you worried about him?" "No. Any time before he had started to drink, he would disappear for a few days." "But you thought he had gone to see someone?" Martha burst out with, "Don't you see? I was just so damn glad he had gone. I didn't think. I lived for his disappearances." "Did he often get phone calls?" "No. He wasn't popular." "I think that'll do for now." Hamish looked around the bleak cottage. "Have they been to search his things?" "Yes. The detectives were here looking for letters or papers, but there wasn't anything." "I'll arrange for someone to come and help you clear out his stuff. Best to get rid of the reminders." "Thank you." Hamish said goodbye and left. He made his way back to the police station. He walked into the kitchen. Clary was sitting bouncing Martha's baby on his knee while the children sat around eating ice cream. Hamish addressed Johnny. "You'd all better get home right away and look after your mother. She'll be beginning to wonder where you are, and I don't want her pestered by reporters." Clary carried the baby out to the pram. He would have gone with them, but Hamish ordered him to stay. When the children had gone, he said, "Clary, you've caused enough gossip. Leave the poor woman alone for a bit. She needs help." "I'll get her help. Now, I've got to make a phone call." Hamish went through to the police office and dialed Strathbane headquarters. He asked to be put through to Blair, and to his surprise, the phone call was answered by Superintendent Peter Daviott. "I was trying to reach Mr. Blair," said Hamish. "I happened to be in the detective's room when the phone rang. There's no one here at the moment. What's it about?" Hamish said, "I had a word with Martha MacLeod, the dustman's widow." He told Daviott about the phone call, ending with, "So I thought headquarters could get on to tracing that call right away." "Good work, Hamish. I'll let Blair know." Back in the kitchen, Clary was producing, out of the oven, a steaming casserole of boeuf bourguignon. "Smells great," said Hamish, "but I've got to go out for a bit. And when I get back, until we hear from Blair, we may as well start questioning everyone in the village, even if they have been questioned already." He made his way to Dr. Brodie's house and knocked at the kitchen door. Angela, the doctor's wife, answered. "Oh, come in, Hamish. Terrible business about Fergus." Hamish followed her into the kitchen. "I've come about Martha," he said. "Perhaps you and some of the other women could call on her and give her a hand clearing out Fergus's old stuff." "I was going to do that anyway. You'd best have a word with the Curry sisters." "Why? Are they terribly upset over the murder?" Angela pushed a wisp of hair away from her thin face. "It's not that, Hamish. It's Clary." "What about him?" "Jessie overheard him in Patel's on the evening Fergus disappeared, threatening to kill him. Martha's neighbours heard him before that, threatening to kill Fergus. You'd better shut them up." "Like I told you, Clary's already been grilled by Blair, and wonder upon wonders, he hasn't been arrested. And, talking about shutting people up, I'd best go round to the Curry sisters." "What?" demanded Nessie Curry wrathfully. "Us? Gossiping? I thought it was too much to hope that a lazy loon like you might actually call to see how we were." "The situation is this," said Hamish severely. "I sent Clary up to Martha MacLeod to look after her. If he wasn't with her, he was with me." "Ha!" snorted Nessie. "And why would she need looking after?" "This was afore the murder. Her husband had been beating her." "Beating her?" echoed Jessie. "But herself always said she was clumsy. "Well, he was beating her, and she's a poor soul, in need of friends. Angela Brodie is getting some of the women together to help Martha clear out Fergus's things." "And I suppose you want us to help?" demanded Nessie. "It would be a Christian act." "But did I not hear Clary Graham sing he would kill Fergus, exclaimed Jessie. "Come on, half the village must have been heard saying they would kill Fergus." "And he was beating her," said Nessie. "That he was. Can you imagine what her life was like, ladies?" "So she must be feeling glad that he's dead." "Dead," echoed her sister. "It'll be a long time before she feels that way. She feels guilt, anger, remorse, and fear. She'll be worried sick about money." "She could get a job, said Jessie. "How? She's got 4 young children. Eileen, who works up at the Tommel Castle Hotel, told me she has an arrangement with the other workers. They work shifts, and the one that isn't working at a specific time looks after the children of the others," said Nessie. "I'll be looking into that. So you'll help?" "Yes," said Nessie. "Only if more women stayed unmarried like us, there'd be less grief in the world. And, by the way, the new school teacher is arriving in a couple of days. I hope you're not going to chase her like you did the last one." "Good evening," said Hamish firmly, and made his escape.
Side 3.
So, Maisie, the previous school teacher, had decided not to come back. Hamish wondered what the new one would be like. Then he remembered Priscilla's friend, who would have arrived by now. He wished he had some lady friend to show Priscilla that he definitely did not care any more who she invited or what she did. But curiosity overcame him. He returned to the police station and got in the Land Rover. Before he switched on the engine, he heard Lugs scrabbling at the kitchen door. He sighed and got down from the Land Rover and opened the door. "Come on, boy," he said. "I've been neglecting you." When he straightened up, after fastening a leash around the dog's neck, he saw an empty plate on the kitchen table with a note beside it. It was from Clary. "I heard you coming, so I left your dinner on the table." Hamish looked down at his dog, who licked his lips and hung his head. "You're full of birth bourguignon, you lousy animal." Lugs looked up at him imploringly out of his odd blue eyes. "Oh, come on anyway," said Hamish crossly. "But if you go on like this, you'll be as fat as Clary." Hamish lifted his dog into the passenger seat, got in himself, and drove off. It took him just 5 minutes to drive to the Tommel Castle Hotel. The car park was full. He walked into the hotel foyer with Lugs on a leash. He looked in the bar and hurriedly retreated. It was full of journalists. One was trying to balance a glass of whisky on his nose, and the others were cheering him on. Hamish retreated and then looked in the dining room. Priscilla was sitting at a table with a tall, good-looking man. She looked up and saw Hamish and waved him over. Her companion, advertising executive Jerry Darcy, was a kind and amiable man, but the sight of the tall, gangly policeman with the flaming red hair leading an odd mongrel with big ears and blue eyes was too much for him. He began to laugh helplessly. "Jerry, please," admonished Priscilla. "This is our policeman, Hamish Macbeth. Hamish, Jerry Darcy." Jerry wiped his streaming eyes and got courteously to his feet. "Something amusing you?" demanded Hamish. "Sorry," said Jerry with a grin. "It was you and that dog." "And what is up with my dog?" "It's an odd-looking animal, you must admit." "There is nothing whatever up with my dog," said Hamish, furious because he felt ridiculous, furious because Priscilla's beau was handsome and well-dressed. Lugs, sensing his master's rage, grabbed hold of the tablecloth and began to back away, pulling it. Wineglasses and 2 plates of food tumbled onto the floor. "Lugs!" shouted Hamish, his face red with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, Priscilla. I'd better take him away. I'll talk to you tomorrow." Hamish dragged Lugs back into the foyer, only to find himself surrounded by reporters. To all their questions, he said, "Call Detective Chief Inspector Blair at Strathbane," and made his escape. Once in the Land Rover, he sat there for a few moments, cursing Lugs and cursing his own bad temper. Lugs let out a pathetic little whimper, and Hamish patted the animal's rough coat. "It wasn't your fault, laddie, but he shouldn't have laughed at me." Hamish had set the alarm and woke early and roused Clary. "I want you to go to the Curry sisters and take them through their story again. I mean, that pair are always peering through their net curtains at what's going on. I'll start with the fisherman. Blair'll be here soon, so we'd best get out and about. I gather you got out of being arrested. How?" Clary told him how, and Hamish laughed and laughed. "Man, I'd have liked to see Blair's face when you threatened him with the Race Relations Board. Now let's get a move on." Hamish headed for the harbour. He saw Callum McSween, who said he was ready to start work. Hamish gave him the keys to the garbage truck. Callum walked off. Hamish saw Archie sitting disconsolately on the harbour wall. "Nowhere to drink?" asked Hamish, who knew the fishermen usually headed for the Loch Dhu bar after a night's work. "That foreigner bought it over," said Archie, "and he is going to turn it into the gift shop, so I'm stuck out here in the open where the wife can find me." "Archie, you didn't like Fergus much, did you?" "No, that I didn't, and nobody else did either. We didn't notice him much until he got that stupid uniform and started bossing us all around. But none of us would have touched him, Hamish, you know that." "And him to like him. And who was that?" "Josie, darling." "Her? She's getting all ready for her wedding." "Aye. She's taken time off work, too." Hamish thought hard. Josie was young and frivolous. She lived with her mother in a cottage up a lane at the back of the new hotel. "I'll go and see her." He walked towards Josie's cottage, glancing up at the sky. It was a milky blue, but there was a dampness in the breeze on his cheek. Rain coming soon, he thought. He turned over in his mind what he knew about Josie. She worked in a bank in Strathbane and was engaged to someone from Inverness. Her father was dead. Her mother worked as a maid at the Tommel Castle Hotel. She planned to live in Inverness after her marriage. A big wedding was to be held in the Church of Scotland in Loch Dhu, and, as was the tradition at Highland weddings, the whole village was going. The wedding was to be in 2 weeks' time. He knocked on the cottage door and then turned around and surveyed the view while he waited for someone to answer it. Down on the waterfront he could see the white, overalled figure of Callum McSween, working busily. He turned back as the door opened. Josie stood there. She was a small girl with dyed blonde hair and a pug face. She had large, rather protruding eyes. She was wearing a short skirt which displayed fat legs to disadvantage and a low-cut blouse. Those eyes goggled when she saw Hamish. "What is it?" she asked harshly. "Can I come in?" She backed away reluctantly. He followed her into the living room. On a coffee table were many glossy magazines: Brides, Your Wedding, Hair and Beauty. "Getting ready for the wedding?" asked Hamish. "Oh, that. I'm not having it in Loch Dhu." "Why not? Everyone's been looking forward to it." "Murdo wants to have it in Inverness." "Murdo being your fiancé?" "Yes." "I thought the wedding was usually held in the bride's parish." "Yes, but I've only got Mother. Murdo's got loads of relatives, so we thought it would be more reasonable to have it in Inverness. Anyway, I'm sick of this place." "Loch Dhu? Where else?" "Why?" "It's so provincial," said Josie. Hamish privately thought that Josie was hardly the picture of sophistication. "Anyway," said Josie, "is that why you came? To ask about the wedding?" "No, it's about Fergus." "The dustman? What about him?" "I believe you're friendly with him." "Oh, no. I just gave the wee man a cup of tea from time to time. That way he took all our rubbish." "Did you like him?" Again, that sort of false grande dame air. "He was just a dustman. I sometimes chat to the postman as well." "So is there anything you can tell me about him? Did he look frightened about anything? Did he say anyone was out to get him?" "No. He just said they were all bastards, and he hated them. He didn't say whether anyone hated him." "Well, if you remember anything, let me know." Hamish said goodbye. But as he walked down from the cottage, he thought, "She's lying. There's something there. I'll let her think she's safe, and then I'll go back. I'll try Mrs. Darling up at the hotel." He went to the police station to collect the Land Rover and was confronted by a raging Detective Chief Inspector Blair. He pointed to a torn trouser leg. "Look what your dog did!" he shouted. "Did you just walk into the station?" asked Hamish. "Yes." "Well, there you are. Lugs is a guard dog." "You'll pay for this." Blair was in a foul temper. Peter Daviett had called him in and had told him that Hamish had secured an excellent interview with the widow MacLeod, much better than anything Jimmy Anderson had got out of her. Blair had gone in to see him with the full intention of asking that Hamish Macbeth be kept off the case. Instead, he had been told that Hamish had to be brought into everything. "I've got someone to interview," said Hamish, getting into the Land Rover. He drove off, leaving Blair glowering after him. He stopped on the waterfront when he saw the foxy features of Jimmy Anderson. "I thought you were going to come and see me," said Hamish. "I did, yesterday evening, but there was no one there except that dog of yours up on the kitchen table, scoffing something." "My dinner," said Hamish. "And now he's ripped the boss's trousers. Where are you off to?" "Tell you later if you come round. Get the whisky ready." Hamish drove on to the hotel. The first person he saw when he parked the car was Jerry Darcy, who gave him a cheerful wave. Hamish scowled in reply, and then felt he was being petty. He got down from the Land Rover, meaning to chat to Jerry, but the man was driving off. Hamish went into the hotel office where the manager, Mr. Johnson, was working on the accounts. "What are you after, Hamish?" "Mrs. Darling." "Heather Darling? Don't tell me she's a suspect." "No, I just want a wee word with her." "She's just about to go off duty. Hang on here for a minute and help yourself to coffee, and I'll fetch her for you." Hamish went over to the coffee machine and poured himself a mug of coffee. He had a sudden, sharp longing for a cigarette, although he had not smoked for some years. The door opened, and Heather Darling walked in, twisting her apron in red, work-roughened hands. She was a small, plump woman with greying hair and a round, rosy face. "Sit down," said Hamish. "What's up? Is it Josie?" "No, nothing's wrong. I just wanted to ask you a few questions about Fergus." "The Dustman?" "Yes, him. I believe he was on friendly terms with you and your daughter." He knew before she opened her mouth that she was going to repeat word for word what Josie had said. But unlike her daughter, who had a hard streak, Heather Darling was frightened and trying hard not to show it. He wondered whether to use Blair's methods, accuse her of lying and try to break her down. But he had a feeling she would stick to that story through thick and thin. In some way, she was protecting her daughter. To try to put her at her ease, he asked about the wedding. "It's fine," said Heather curtly. "What's it got to do with the murder?" "Nothing," said Hamish. "Look, maybe when you've had time to think, you'll remember something." Her face set in stubborn lines. Hamish said, "You know where to find me. I'll be calling on you again." "What about?" "About Fergus's murder." "Think about it." He wondered how Clary was getting on. Clary was at that moment wishing himself anywhere else but in the Curry sisters' cottage, faced by two pairs of baleful eyes behind thick glasses. "I am just trying to find out if you can remember anything else," said Clary. "And we are wondering," said Nessie severely, "what you, an officer of the law, were doing romancing a married woman." "A married woman," muttered the Greek chorus that was her sister. Clary turned red. "I was acting under orders from my superior officer. Martha MacLeod was being beaten by her husband. Sergeant Macbeth wanted me to try to get her to make a complaint." "And did that mean you should take them out in a boat and turn the police station into a disco?" "Yes. Kindness towards a family which is in sore need of it may seem strange to you ladies." "We are not forgetting our duty," said Nessie. "We're going to help her clean up." "So, now we've got that out of the way," said Clary, "Sergeant Macbeth tells me that you are a very noticing pair of ladies. I would like to ask you if you noticed anything strange the night Fergus was killed." "When was he exactly killed? Exactly killed?" asked Jessie. Clary strove for patience. "I mean the night you found him in your bin." The sisters looked at each other. Then Nessie said, "It was a quiet evening. That Josie Darling went past." "At what time?" "At about 8 o'clock, teetering along on a stupid pair of high heels. If I had legs like that, I would cover them," said Nessie, glancing down complacently at her own skinny shanks. "Before that, it was Mrs. Docherty, who lives next door. She walked over to the waterfront and looked at the loch. Then she came back. Mrs. Wellington, the minister's wife, went by going to the schoolhouse, I think. She's supervising the arrangements for the new teacher, but that was earlier, about 6 o'clock. "Any strange noises?" They both shook their heads of rigidly permed hair. "Well, if you think of anything, let me know." Clary made his way back along the waterfront. He was stopped by Angela Brodie, the doctor's wife. "Could you give me a bit of help? I and some of the women want to go and help Martha clear out Fergus's things, but we don't want to call too soon and upset her. Do you think you could ask her, you being a friend of hers?" Clary's round face brightened at the idea of a legitimate opportunity to go and call on Martha. "I'll go right away," he said, touching the peak of his cap. He swung round and with a light step headed towards Martha's cottage. They were all sitting indoors, the old television flickering in the corner of the living room. Martha had great dark shadows under her eyes, and she appeared to have lost more weight. Her clothes hung on her thin body. "Had any supper?" asked Clary. "None of us are feeling very hungry." "Won't do," said Clary. "You've got to keep your strength up for the children's sake and for your own. Get ready. We're all going down to the Italian restaurant. Dinner's on me." Martha saw the way her children brightened up, but she hesitated. "There's the baby." "Put the baby in the pram, and we'll wheel the pram into the restaurant." "Won't they protest? And I'm not properly dressed." "It's not the Ritz," said Clary. "Come on." Willie Lamont, who used to be Hamish's constable and who now waited table at the restaurant, protested when Martha and Clary lifted the pram with the sleeping baby into the restaurant. Clary took him aside and whispered fiercely, "They are all in need of a good meal, so I won't have any protests from you. That poor woman's been stuck up there in that dingy cottage. The ladies of Lochdu are going to help her clean up, so if they can help, so can you." "Clean up?" Willie's eyes gleamed with an almost religious fervour. "Nobody can clean like me. Have you tried that new cleaner on the market, Green Lightning? Man, the way it cuts through grease is grand." And before Clary could stop him, he headed purposely towards Martha. "I hear some of the ladies are coming to help you clean. You just say the day, and I'll be there." Martha looked at Clary. "What's all this about?" "Angela Brodie and some of the others thought you would feel better if you had a bit of help to clean out your husband's things. But if you'd like to wait a bit—" "No, I don't mind. Any time will do. I'd be glad of the help." Mr. Ferrari, the owner, joined them. "Ah, Mrs. MacLeod," he said, "my condolences on your sad loss. You are my guests for this evening. Have anything on the menu you want? Officer Graham, perhaps you would like to see our kitchens?" Clary wanted to stay with Martha, but, on the other hand, cooking was in his blood. "Just a wee look," he said. "I don't want to leave Mrs. MacLeod alone for long." Clary was taken on a tour of the kitchens. He had always thought he would be unfit for the restaurant trade, but he could feel his enthusiasm growing. Mr. Ferrari crooned in his ear how easy the job of chef would be, and how a man interested in food was wasting his time as a police officer. "You don't know if I can cook," said Clary. "True. Why don't you give it a try on your day off?" "Maybe I'll do that. Now I'd best get back to Martha and the children." Martha, with her wan face and well-behaved children, was creating a good impression among the other customers. In these days of spoilt, whining brats, even the sternest hearts melt at the sight of a quiet, well-behaved child. People had stopped by the table while Clary was in the kitchen to give Martha their condolences. Clary sat down with them and picked up the menu. He planned to slim down, but a free meal was a free meal. He would diet tomorrow. They had a simple meal of minestrone, ravioli, and huge slices of chocolate cake. Clary told tales of policing, all highly embroidered, and was pleased to notice that Martha was eating everything. When he returned to the police station, Hamish was waiting. "You've been away a long time," he said. "It happened like this." Clary described how he had ended up in the Italian restaurant. "You should go carefully," said Hamish. "Blair's been round and he's spitting bullets. Seems as if Fergus was killed somewhere else and carried to the bin." Hamish knew the real reason Blair was furious. He had wanted Hamish off the case and had been told to keep him on. "So what did you get out of the Curry sisters?" "Not much," said Clary, fumbling for his notebook. "Do you want me to read out what I've got?" "Go ahead." Clary read out from his notes. "See," he said. "Nothing there." "Yes, there is," said Hamish Macbeth. "There's something there that interests me a lot." Chapter 4. "Ah, make the most of what we yet may spend, before we too into the dust descend. Dust into dust, and under dust to lie, sans wine, sans song, sans singer, and sans end." Edward Fitzgerald. Jimmy Anderson poked his head around the kitchen door. "Come in," said Hamish. "Clary, you'd best go and start typing up your notes, and I'll do mine after." When Clary had left, Hamish asked, "Well, what's new?" "What kind of whiskey do you have?" Hamish went to a cupboard and pulled out a bottle of Johnny Walker. "That'll do fine," said Jimmy. He waited until Hamish had poured him a generous glassful. Then he said, "The autopsy report puts the death at about 2 days before he was found. Didn't those Curry sisters notice the smell before then?" "Can't have. They only noticed when they lifted the lid." "You're slipping, Hamish. Didn't you ask them?" "I should have. I was too concerned in stopping their gossip about Clary and Martha MacLeod." Jimmy sipped his whiskey and then eyed Hamish speculatively. "Not like you at all. You're that fat copper's sergeant, not his father. I know he trounced Blair with that threat of the Race Relations Board, but to my mind he's still a suspect. If it wasn't with me, it was with Mrs. MacLeod. Judging from the contents of the dead man's stomach, he was killed sometime during the night. You don't sleep with your copper, do you?" "It's not him," said Hamish stubbornly. "Oh, well. Blair's having a hard time with that environment woman, but he's not much interested in this case. He thinks he's got the chance of making a drugs bust. Davitt told him to keep you informed, so he's sulking and saying you can handle it. He's trying to get me put in charge. Can you get me the forensic report? More whiskey? Help yourself. The bottle's in front of you. Thanks. Jimmy poured a large amount into his glass. Then he dug into the inside pocket of his jacket and produced 2 sheets of paper. 1 copy of a forensic report. Here you are. Hamish scanned it. Could they judge if he had been killed far from the curry's bin? No, not far. There was still some blood had leaked from his head into the bin. The Currys live on the waterfront. I cannot believe that in this village, even in the middle of the night, someone carried a dead body and put it in that bin without a soul seeing anything. Wait a bit. The bin's round the side. The lane to Martha's runs up the side of the cottage, and it's a low fence. Did they find anything there? They're still working on it. But, say, 2 people could have done it. One to lift the body over the fence, another to catch it and put it in the bin. But why the Currys? I spoke to Nessie Curry. She seemed proud of the fact that she was the greenest person in Loch Dhu, and Fergus didn't appreciate it. Food refuse goes into the compost heap, apart from the stuff they give to Mrs. Docherty next door for her hens. Jessie says they have the least garbage of anyone in Loch Dhu, so whoever did it would guess the body wouldn't be found for some time. Ah, that's daft. Anyone who didn't want the body found could have weighted it down and dumped it in the loch, or taken it up on the moors and sunk it into a peat bog. No. Putting Fergus in a dustbin has an element of revenge and hatred in it, even after the man was killed. To tell the truth, I don't know a soul in Loch Dhu with that sort of character or motivation. There is one odd thing. There's a wee lassie up the back of the harbour, name of Josie Darling, getting married in 2 weeks' time. Now, she goes on as if she's a glamour puss, but she's just a wee village girl. But she was friendly with Fergus, and she's hiding something. I'm going to have another go at her tomorrow. Aye. Well, you better concentrate a bit more. Forget about Clary. They talked for some time, going over and over the case. Clary came in. Typed up my notes, sir. What about lunch? That would be grand, said Jimmy, before Hamish could reply. I've nothing much in the house, said Clary, easing round them to the stove, but I could make a cheese omelette. Jimmy drank and he watched, amused as Clary deftly whipped eggs. Soon he was placing 3 plates of fluffy omelette in front of them. Great, said Jimmy. You pair ought to get married. He saw Lugs put a paw on Hamish's knee. Does your dog eat cheese omelette? I've got something for him. Clary took down a bowl of chopped liver he had cooked earlier from a rack above the cooker and placed it on the floor. That's an odd-looking dog, said Jimmy. But any dog that can attack Blair and tear his trousers deserves the best food. After Jimmy had left, Hamish said to Clary, check at that new hotel if there are any workers apart from the locals. I've got a call to make. Come on, Lugs, walk. With the dog trotting along beside him, he walked to Mrs. Docherty's cottage. He tied the leash to the fence and then knocked at the door. Mrs. Docherty was a tired-looking, middle-aged woman with grey hair and small eyes. When she answered the door and saw Hamish standing there, a closed look came over her face, and she said primly, What is it? I wanted a word with you. What about? About the murder. It's got nothing to do with me. I just wanted to ask you a few questions. Is your man at home? No. He's working in Strathbane. Can I come in? No, I'm cleaning. Then we'll talk in the garden. I want to ask you if you saw or heard anything. Fergus's body was put in the bin soon after he was murdered. I didn't see or hear anything. Why ask me? Hamish remembered Clary telling him that the Currys had seen Mrs. Docherty walk across the road and stare at the loch and walk back again. It was just a small thing, and yet Mrs. Docherty, like the rest of the locals, was so used to the magnificent scenery around her that she barely noticed. He'd had a mental picture of a worried woman going out to stare blindly at the loch, but maybe his imagination had run away with him. I heard that on the evening Fergus was found, you went out of your cottage and walked across and looked at the loch, and then walked back again. So what's up with that? It struck me as the action of someone who was deeply worried about something. Havers, she said briskly, I often go and have a look at the loch. Why? Why? Do I need a reason? Because it's there. She was afraid of something. Of that Hamish was sure. And it couldn't be because she was being interviewed by a policeman. No one in Loch Dhu was afraid of him. I'll be back, he said. He walked out of the small garden and unhitched Lugs and walked away. Mrs. Docherty stood watching his tall figure and clenched and unclenched her hands. Hamish went back to the station and typed up his notes, and then faxed the little he had, along with Clary's notes, to Strathbane. Clary came in just as he finished. "Anything?" asked Hamish. "Apart from the secretary and Miss Stathos, the rest are locals. Miss Stathos says Mr. Ionides plans to hire local staff as well when he's ready to open. Waiters and maids and manager and all that." Hamish leaned back in his chair. "Oh, my. That means he'll go after the staff at the Tommel Castle Hotel. Maybe they'll stay loyal. Times are hard. If he offers higher wages, then they'll go. There don't seem to be any reporters left. There's a triple murder in Inverness. They'll rely on the local man from now on. At least we should get a bit of peace." 4 more days went by, during which Jimmy Anderson, Hamish and Clary assiduously interviewed the population of Lochdoe. Hamish went over forensic reports. The ground at the lane beside the Curry sisters' garden had been hard with all the dry weather, and had not yielded anything. The side of the house and at the back where the bin stood was covered in gravel. Frustrated, Hamish decided to examine the place closely for himself. He realized that, like everyone else these days, he had been blinded by the glories of forensic science and had assumed they had missed nothing. He knew the Curry sisters had gone up to Martha's cottage with Mrs. Wellington and Angela to clear out Fergus's things. He carried a large magnifying glass, and feeling ridiculous, feeling that he looked like a stage detective, he began to go over every inch of ground along with the fence and the road at the side. The rain he had expected had not yet arrived, although the air was moist and damp. After 2 hours he was about to give up when he saw a little spark of colour between the fence posts. He took out a pair of tweezers and eased out a tiny little pink thread of material. It was so small that when he took the magnifying glass away from his eye, he could barely see it. He put it in a plastic envelope. He would wait until the Currys had finished cleaning and ask them if they had any idea where it might have come from. Angela was glad she had given the children some money for sweets and had sent them off, for Mrs. Wellington was trying to persuade Martha that some of Fergus's clothes could be cut down for the boys. Surprisingly, it was Nessie who stood up to the domineering minister's wife. "Leave her be," said Nessie firmly. "She doesn't want anything of her man left in the cottage." "Left in the cottage," echoed Jessie, and both sisters glared at Mrs. Wellington. "Well, let's bag up the stuff, and I'll take it into a charity shop in Strathbane," said Mrs. Wellington, capitulating. The women worked busily, bagging up suits and shirts, socks and underwear. Martha, finding Angela the most sympathetic, kept close to her. In the bedroom Martha had shared with Fergus, Angela said, "The rugs in here could do with throwing out. I've got a nice carpet in the loft at home. My husband didn't like it because it's bright red, but it's warm and cheery. Where did you get these rugs?" "They're awful, aren't they?" said Martha, with a weak smile. "Fergus found them in someone's rubbish at a croft house and brought them home. They're all cigarette burns." "I'll take them away and bring you the carpet," said Angela. "No, please take it. It's a waste of a good carpet if it stays in my loft. Let's just roll up these dreadful rugs." Angela got down on her knees and started to roll up one by the window. "There's a floorboard been sawn here," she said. "Is this where you hide the family jewels?" Martha walked over and stared down. One of the floorboards had been sawn to make a square like a lid. "I never really noticed that before," she said. "I'm sorry the floor's dirty. I was going to wash it, but Fergus shouted at me to leave it alone." "Mind if I have a look and see if there's anything down there?" asked Angela. "No, go ahead." "I need something to lift it, a screwdriver or something." "I'll get one. There's a toolbox under the bed." Martha came back after a few moments with a screwdriver. Angela prized up the sawn square of wood. She peered in the cavity. Then she reached down and pulled out a plastic envelope with what appeared to be several letters in it. Angela peered through the plastic. Some of the letters seemed to be covered in food stains and coffee stains. "I think if you don't mind, Martha, I'll just take this along to Hamish Macbeth. I would let you look at it first, but it might be important, and I don't want to get too many fingerprints on it." "Go ahead," said Martha wearily. Angela hurried out and made her way to the police station. A light rain was beginning to fall. Oh, well, thought Angela, sadly, it's not often we've had a summer like this one. It couldn't last forever. She saw the tall figure of Hamish in front of her and hurried to catch up with him. "Hamish," she said, "look what I found under the floorboards in Fergus's bedroom." He took the plastic envelope from her. "It seems to be letters, Hamish. There might be a clue." "Thanks, Angela. I'll take it into the station and have a look at it. I'd better get back before Mrs. Wellington bullies poor Martha to death." Hamish hurried into the police station, into the office, sat down at his desk, and gingerly eased the letters out with the tweezers he had used earlier. The first one had been written to Josie Darling. He read, "Dear Josie, I just can't go through with it. I'm sorry to let you down at the last minute, but I've met someone else, and it's real love this time. If you need any help writing apology letters or returning the presents, let me know. You'll hate me for a bit, but after time passes, you'll come to realize I did the right thing. I hope you too will find someone. Yours, Murdo." "The bastard," said Hamish out loud. Luggs scrabbled at his knee. "Down, boy," said Hamish sharply. He put the letter carefully to one side. Then he picked up the next. "Dear Helen, I'll never forget our night in Strathbane. I'm still travelling around, but I hope to be back in Strathbane soon. Any chance of you getting away from your old man? Give us a bell if you can, Snookums. Always your loving Pat." Who was Helen? Wondered Hamish. The next was a letter to Crofter, Angus Ettrick. It was from his bank manager. Hamish scanned it rapidly. It was telling Angus that he could have no further credit. The fourth was an old newspaper cutting. It read, "Mrs. Fiona McClellan appeared at Strathbane Sheriff's Court yesterday, charged with shoplifting. A psychiatrist, Dr. J. Arthur, testified that Mrs. McClellan was now undergoing treatment for kleptomania. Sheriff Paul Tampley gave Mrs. McClellan a suspended sentence of 1 year, but told her that should she appear in his court again, then he would not be so lenient." Hamish's heart sank lower. Mrs. McClellan was the bank manager's wife. There could only be one explanation as to why Fergus had kept these items hidden under the floorboards. Blackmail. Hamish groaned and put his head in his hands. He should phone Strathbane immediately and reveal the contents of what Angela had found. Blair would descend like the wrath of God. He was a great man for arresting first and asking questions afterwards. 4 lives might be needlessly ruined. He looked down at his dog, who stared back up at him with those odd blue eyes. "I'll give it a day, Luggs. 1 day. Let's see what they have to say for themselves." But who's Helen? Hamish started off by going to see Josie. When she opened the door to him, a mulish look settled on her face. "What is it now?" she demanded sharply. "Can I come in?" "No, I'm busy." "So do you want to tell me about the cancelled wedding, and why Fergus was blackmailing you out here on the step?" She burst into tears. Hamish put an arm around her and guided her into the living room. Her mother rose to her feet in alarm. "What have you said?" she shouted. "Let's all sit down and talk this over quietly," said Hamish. He pressed the weeping Josie down into a chair and then sat down himself. While Fergus was going through everyone's rubbish to make sure everything was in the right receptacle, he collected letters and things he thought might be useful. "He kept a letter to you from your fiancé, Murdo, Josie. In it, Murdo breaks off the engagement. For some reason, your pride wouldn't let you tell anyone, and it is my belief Fergus asked you for payment to keep his mouth shut." Josie scrubbed her eyes dry and glared at him defiantly. "Prove it." "If you are uncooperative, I will turn the letter over to police headquarters, and Detective Chief Inspector Blair will haul you in for questioning. You'll have a rougher time with him than you will with me. He may not arrest you, but it will be in the papers that a woman is helping police with their inquiries, and everyone in Lochdu will have seen you being taken off in a police car. Come on now, be honest." Josie looked at her mother, who gave a little nod. "Yes, he asked for money," she said wearily. "Oh, the shame of it. Him jilting me. I'd bragged to all my friends about getting married." "How much?" £500. He said if I gave him 500, he would let me have the letter back. I told him I'd spent too much on the wedding and he'd need to wait, but he would drop in on his rounds and ask for tea and sit there, grinning at me. I could have killed him." Josie gasped and put a hand to her mouth as if to stuff the words back in. "A lot of people could," said Hamish. "But, lassie, I know it was a sore blow, but you'd have had to tell folks finally. What about the presents?" "I must have been mad," said Josie, her eyes filling with tears. "I was going to go down to Inverness and stay with Auntie Margaret and get work. I was going to tell folks here that Murdo wanted a quiet wedding in Inverness." "And keep all the presents?" "I was going to return them when she had gone," said Mrs. Darling. "So you didn't pay the money?" £500 is an awful lot of money. I was trying to string them along until something happened." Hamish, going towards Martha's cottage, met Angela on her way home. "Did you tell the Curry sisters or Mrs. Wellington about the letters?" asked Hamish. "No, and I don't think Martha said anything either." Angela, that wee scunner Fergus was using information he found in the garbage to blackmail a few people. I'll need to let Strathbane know eventually, but if I can protect them for a few days, I will. I'll speak to Martha, get her to say she just found them when I tell her to. That's awful, Hamish. Fergus deserved to be murdered. Nobody deserves to be murdered. He did, said Angela firmly. Hamish was turning away when he turned back and asked, "Can you think of any Helens in the village?" Helen? Let me see, there's Helen McGregor out on the Breaky side. There's Helen Jensen, but she's just a wee schoolgirl. There's Helen Doherty. Mrs. Doherty? Her name's Helen? Yes. Right. Hamish strode off and left Angela staring after him. Martha opened the door to him and invited him inside. The cottage had a polished and scrubbed look. "I only wanted them to take away Fergus's things," said Martha, "but they insisted on doing the housekeeping as well. Was there anything in those letters that Angela found?" "That's what I want to talk to you about. Have you looked at your husband's bank book?" "No, not yet." "Did he leave a will?" "He did. He left everything to me, such as it is." "Good, right. Here's the problem. It is my belief your husband was a blackmailer." "Oh, no," Martha wailed. "He was using letters he found in the rubbish. I'm keeping it quiet at the moment, Martha. It's all right if I call you Martha." "Yes." "We're Hamish and Martha, unless we're being official. Now, let's see that bank book." "It's in a drawer in the sideboard." Martha went to the sideboard, which was one of those awful cheap 30s pieces of furniture made of yellowish wood and badly carved. She jerked one of the doors open and produced a Bank of Scotland bank book. Hamish studied it. There was the payment of £200, probably from Mrs. McClellan. Then there was another payment of £500, and everything else was Fergus's salary. "I may ask you to pay back the money he extorted from people, Martha, but I can't do anything until I find the murderer. You see, the thing is, if I take the letters to the police, a lot of innocent villagers might suffer, get their reputations ruined. I must ask you not to talk about this." "I wouldn't dream of it," gasped Martha. "Oh, the shame of it." She suddenly turned a muddy colour. "But, Hamish, what if one of them he was blackmailing killed him, and they think I've got the proof?" "I've thought of that, believe me. Whoever did it will know your cottage has been searched from top to bottom. You were searched, weren't you?" She nodded dumbly. "How they missed that bit in the bedroom floor is beyond me." "They weren't looking for anything like that," said Martha. "I mean, I showed them the will, the bank book, but there was nothing else in that drawer, and they seemed satisfied with that. They were talking about some football match back in Strathbane and wondering if they could wrap things up and get back in time." Hamish reflected that people only read in their newspapers about murderers being caught by one hair or saliva on a cigarette, and never heard about the ones where the investigating team wanted to get back in time for a football match and possibly missed something important. If Martha had killed her husband, whatever clues might have been left had been scrubbed away by the helpful ladies of Loch Dhu. "I'll let you know how I get on," he said, "but I can only keep this quiet for a few days." He was heading for the door when Martha asked, "How's Clary?" "He's fine." "Give him my regards." "Will do." Hamish walked out. He had a sudden awful thought that a battered wife like Martha might have seen in Clary the husband she had always wanted and had hammered her husband to death. He shook his head to clear it. He'd better interview the other suspects fast and trust to his instinct. He walked down to Mrs. Doherty's cottage and knocked on the door. Her husband, he remembered, worked at the fish counter in a supermarket in Strathbane. Mrs. Doherty opened the door. Her eyes dilated with fright, and then she masked it with fury. "This is police harassment." "You must have been expecting me to call for some time. How long was Fergus MacLeod blackmailing you?" She stood very still. Then she said wearily, "You'd better come in." She led the